Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the different regions of the globe that you are joining us from. My name is Cristian Sakino. I am the Director of Operations at Island Innovation, and I thank you for joining us today on this session. This is one of the sessions that I was looking forward the most. It goes about the blue economy, which is one of the most important topics that we have right now because islands are surrounded by the ocean and we need to protect the ocean, but we also need to source some um, things from the ocean. It goes about the fisheries, it goes about all of that. So we're going to be uh, discussing these topics on this session. This is day 2 of the Virtual Island Summit. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this session. To anyone that doesn't know it already, Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include island development strategies, impact program design and coordination, capacity building, events, strategic communications, and government affairs. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you are interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information available in the chat. I am very happy to be presenting this session that is titled Thriving Blue. Why is it thriving blue? Because we need the ocean and its resources to thrive. Unlocking the potential of fisheries for the sustainable ocean economy. Before we begin this session, you should see a poll that is appearing in your screen right now. And we would like to know you better so we can interact more on this session. Please let us know what is your gender, what region you are connecting from, what industry and sector you belong to. And you will have time to fill out this during the rest of the session. This session, Thriving Blue, will delve into the critical role that sustainable fisheries play in building a thriving blue economy. By bringing together industry leaders, policymakers, and experts, we will explore innovative approaches to balancing ecological health with economic prosperity. I invite you to please make use of the chat function to introduce yourself and where you are joining us from. And you can also make any comments during the session. However, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box on the lower left of your Zoom app. You can add any questions to any of the panelists, and we will try to address them all during the Q&A section of the session. Let me just quickly see the messages here on the chat. We have people from the UK, people from the Bahamas, from the Philippines, from Kenya, from Barbados, from Nigeria, from Canada, from Portugal, from Switzerland, Fiji, Martinique, the Netherlands, Mauritius, Jamaica, Spain, Seychelles, the Maldives, Indonesia. We have a lot of people from different regions. We are very glad about this. All right, so let's see the poll results right now. We have an even split between male and female, mostly. And the region that you're connecting from, we have 31% from Europe, 27% from the Caribbean, 8% from the Indian Ocean, 10% from Asia, 2% from Africa, 8% from the Pacific. Thank you so much for your participation. We have a large contingent of people from the private, government, NGO, and academia sector. And most of you are on the environmental services and oceans conservation industry. Makes sense due to the topic of the session, but we also have people from agriculture, finance, tourism, politics and government, and waste and circular economy. So thank you everyone for your participation. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this session, Dr. Branson Bell, who is the Executive Director for the Center of Excellence for Oceanography and the Blue Economy, COBE, at the University of West Indies. Dr. Branson, you can take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We cannot see.
My video, okay, yeah, video is taking a while to get started. But in the meantime, I would like to welcome everyone to this very important session where we will talk about fisheries as it relates to the blue economy, but not just in fisheries in general, but sustainable ocean economies. How can we harvest and make a living from the ocean, but preserve resources in a way so that generations to come can also live and benefit from our ocean resources. So I would like to introduce our first speaker for the session, which is who is Julianne Russo, the Chief Executive Officer of Caribbean Aquaculture Education and Innovation Hub. So please, the floor is yours. If you could just briefly give a little background to yourself, introduce yourself to the audience, and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Branson. I'm Dr. Julianne Russo. I am from Kingston, Jamaica, and my background is aquaculture, aquatic sciences, primarily in biosecurity and nutrition. So thank you very much for having me today to include aquaculture in the conversation of the Caribbean blue economy. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so in the Caribbean, so often aquaculture is lumped into the generic term of fisheries. Aquaculture at this point should be given its own platform to address how this sector can contribute to the blue economy. For this presentation, by giving the definitions of aquaculture, mariculture, fisheries, and aquatic foods, some clarification can be given to somewhat an ambiguous and inaccessible terminology. Aquaculture is simply the cultivation of plants, animals, and organisms, if you will, in water. And we can further divide aquaculture in its subsector of marine culture, whereas captured fisheries is the act of capturing wild-caught fish and plants. So at this point, we're trying to sort of take aquaculture out of the whole lump sum of fisheries and give it its own platform. Why? For the first time in 2022, global aquaculture activities supersedes captured fisheries, with Asia being the highest producer. However, aquaculture production for Caribbean small islands is less than 1% of the global production, and in some islands is on a decline. Why should this be alarming? Let's just take Jamaica as an example. Jamaica is traditionally the largest island. We're taking it out of Belize and Guyana from the Caribbean, but as an island, this is the largest seafood eating nation. And not to mention the tourist industry. Captured fisheries provides more than 200,000 jobs, especially on the coast, and this is a big number for a small island. With an increase in health consciousness, seafood is nutritious, and with a growing population, the importation of seafood is 20 times the volume of exports. Then we should look at the number of fish caught each year becomes less and less. In fact, we have an overfishing problem in the Caribbean for the past 30 years. Each year, with an increase in hurricanes and warmer waters, fishing activities will be decreased. So why have we not looked at aquaculture as an activity to assist with the decline in industry that is so important to islands? Where in Jamaica, aquaculture only contributes to 0.4% of the GDP. Let's look at some of the opportunities that we're missing. There's a huge gap that needs to be filled, and we're not taking advantage of it. For example, ecotourism is a big activity in Greece. We have a tourist nation or tourist region. Why are we not taking doing some more of this? We have innovation that can be done, creation of animal and human feeds using the current plants that we have or algae production, even looking at making fish powder or shrimp powder, which is an activity that happens in Africa as a protein food for school children. Cosmetic industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry in which we could be utilizing our seaweed. Sargassum needs somewhere to go. More and more each year, sargassum becomes a problem for most of our beaches, which tourism is our primary industry and can affect this industry. So we should be looking at how can we utilize this sargassum problem. Right now, we have some entrepreneurs that are even looking at it for the fashion industry. Aquatic foods. We have not looked into sea cucumber, which is currently being done in Panama. Conch can be used in sushi. We have sea urchins and even seaweed as a food product. So why has aquaculture not taken off? Primarily cultural perceptions which need to be changed. In the Caribbean, aquaculture is often thought of tilapia production, which happens in large inland ponds, which requires land space and fresh water, which is not necessarily accessible for smaller islands, especially in the Eastern Caribbean. So also the high cost of feeds and energy makes it somewhat having aquaculture not being produced as much. Also, in the seaweed industry, which is taking off in St. Lucia and some other islands, there needs to be more quality control, biosecurity measures, and continuous supply. But one of the missed resources is the lack of Caribbean technicians, extension agents, and scientists. Although our literacy rate is quite high, especially within the sciences, coming from O levels, A levels, and even from the university, we have a brain drain problem. And we need to have more specialized knowledge in order to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are available. So in the age of the digital space, and when Zoom became a thing, in 2021, I formed the Caribbean Aquaculture Network, the first network to bring together not only Jamaicans, but to bring all the Caribbean farmers, professionals together so that they can just connect and learn from each other rather than working in isolation, which what has been happening up until now. In fact, the Caribbean islands, it's not very easy to connect. You're spaced out, and just having ability to travel is not as easy. So using the digital space, we can now begin to learn from each other and not reinvent the wheel, just like what we're doing today, learning from each other. And through the digital space and word of mouth, we grew. And by 2023, women in Caribbean aquaculture was formed simply because there were more women. We discovered there are more women aquaculture scientists than there are men. And these women are not being highlighted for their work, especially, if we have like International Day of Science, we never hear about aquaculture scientists. It's not thought about as a science. So we wanted to create a space where we can now start having more of our women talk about their work. This year, in order to start addressing, this year we also heard from the university students, University of the West Indies graduates, marine biology and environmental scientists every year. But there is no space for them to learn about aquaculture, as aquaculture is not being taught in any of our tertiary institutions. And so these students got together to join so that they could start figuring out how to create more. We wanted to be able to create more information for them, form a mentorship, and to provide training so that we can create a next cohort of aquaculture scientists to fill in the blue economy space. So in order to make this a comprehensive where we're inclusive of anyone who wants to learn more about aquaculture, we formed the Caribbean Aquaculture Hub, and this year became, in March 2024, a nonprofit, the first nonprofit run by women, started up by women. And basically, this hub, we want to be able to collaborate with research institutions, not only globally, but also regionally. We have research institutions that are splattered all over the Caribbean that persons don't know about. And so we want to be able to bring all of our research institutions together to work to provide some of the solutions that are specific to the Caribbean and not necessarily follow the model of Asia or Europe or Africa, because we have our own problems as small islands that we need our people to solve. So for the first time this year, I'm proud to say that we have gotten together 10 scientists, somewhat like an Olympic team after St. Lucia and Jamaica and Grenada did quite well. We wanted to make sure that we have our scientists heading towards the World Aquaculture Society Conference, which is something that our scientists don't get to go to. And thanks to sponsorship from Weimar and from other institutions, we also have the National Fisheries Authority sending scientists and the Ministry of St. Lucia. And we really want to start seeing some more of our governments around the islands sending their scientists to conferences so that the world and we can get to know what kind of work is happening in aquaculture, and starting the conversation to make aquaculture filling that gap for the blue economy. So quoting the PM of Barbados, Mia Mottley, our duty is to pivot and to find out the capability of our Caribbean scientists and what our region is capable of. We need to work together to create scale and to transform what is a special place on Earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intervention. Very useful thoughts about aquaculture and your work in developing a network in the Caribbean. So next we will have a presentation by Professor Pierre Faller, Professor and Director of the Centre of Blue Governance from the University of Portsmouth, UK. Welcome to the panel. Please briefly introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will give a short presentation because apparently I have only 5 minutes. So just briefly, so I work in the UK, but I mainly do work almost everywhere in the world, quite a lot in the small island countries. For instance, we have developed for the in 2014 for the Samoa conference. I think it is still one of the first UN document on unlocking the blue potential of the seeds. So I just put that. If you want, you can find it. So I will give a brief presentation on the fishery and aquaculture in the context of the blue economy. I will not focus on the seeds as such, but I will focus on 2 other examples that can be very interesting to look at the place of the fishery and the aquaculture in the ocean economy or the blue economy of the seeds, both in the Caribbean, but also in the Pacific and in the Indian Ocean. So we have done, so I have contributed to a few blue economy strategy, the one of the ASEAN, the one of the African Union, many countries, many RECs in Africa, so regional economic communities. What we found out, and this is what we have shown in the blue economy strategy of Africa, is that more or less the fishery will not grow from now to 2030 and 2060, the aquaculture a bit. And that's the case also for most of the island countries, both, in Africa and Pacific Caribbean. So the situation will not change. What will change, is the growth of the tourism sector. So when you look at this, you say, well, it's better from both from the value addition and from the value added created. So the value addition is on the top, the jobs is on the bottom. It's better, when you look at this, you will say, it's better to invest in the tourists. Forget the fishery, forget the aquaculture, there is no future. But when you look at the ratio of the value added generated, created by each number of people employed, you see that there's also some interesting things. For instance, in the blue carbon ecosystem services, very few people are working on this, and it generates per worker about 150,000. While have a look on the fishery, it's about 1,800 US dollar per year per people. In the aquaculture is a bit better, it's about 3,000. And look at the tourism, it's about almost 5,000. It means that is about 2.5 times the one generated by the fishery. So that's interesting. When you think about that, again, you will think, it's better to invest in the tourism, but you need to have in mind that most of the tourism complex are owned by foreign investors. And very often the people who are working are migrants or low skills or workers. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is when you look at your reverse the things here and you look at the number of employment per 1 million US dollar of value added created, you see that how fishery it's important. So it's quite significant. Okay, it means that if you want to ensure a wide use or a wide implementation of the people along the coast or around the island, it's still a very good option to invest into the fisheries. Okay, you can see, number 7 or the coastal tourism, it's very low, it's about 3 times less than in the fishery. It means that the social dimension and the economic dimension is still very strong and needs to be taken into consideration. The next things I want to put up front is the link between the health status of the ecosystems or the ecological conditions and the fisheries. Here we have some paper. It's a study we have done around Africa using the large marine ecosystem. You see that more or less mangrove, seagrass, coral reef, they are quite degraded. Overall is about 59 or 60%. And if we translate that into fish biomass, we found out that using these figures that we can increase significantly the fish biomass around African or in the African waters, and it's about 10 million tons, okay? Just by improving or restoring the ecosystems. 10 million tons is what is caught today in the African waters. So you see the relationship between the importance of the restorations for the fisheries. And that's, again, can be applied to every islands everywhere. Last slides, just so if you want, we are completing a large EU project on nature-based solutions, blue nature-based solutions, and we have a very important week in November. So you are all invited. Send me an email and I will give you all the information. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pierre, for that. We quickly move on to the next speaker, Rocky Sanchez Tirona, Global Program Lead, Fish Forever, Rare.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There. Okay. Hang on. I'm just going to share my screen. Hello, everyone. It's really good to be here with you all. And my name is Rocky Tirona. I am the global program lead for a program called Fish Forever at RARE. We're an NGO that's focused on behavior-centered solutions for environmental problems. And today I wanted to talk about an area of the ocean that's often overlooked or underrepresented in terms of the numbers. And this is really coastal fisheries, where and it's really focused on the area of the ocean that is just 6% of the ocean. It's the 12 nautical miles from shore, but actually contains 70% of marine biodiversity. And this is also the area that has the highest value in terms of the habitats that are found here, especially coral, mangroves, and seagrass. And then at the same time, has I guess, an underrepresented view of really kind of like the people that depend on this. So over 113 million people actually depend directly on small scale fisheries, most of which are found in coastal waters. And they depend on this either for their jobs or for subsistence. And then almost 400 million other people actually depend on it partially as well. And then at the same time, this is 40% of our seafood catch comes from small scale fisheries. And unlike the rest of the ocean, almost all of this is food. So that's really kind of like, I think, something that doesn't become very apparent all the time. Another important thing that we often neglect is really the idea of nutrition. Fish in coastal waters are very rich in omega-3s and micronutrients like selenium, and these are really critical for the health of pregnant women and developing children. And the latest data from the Illuminating Hidden Harvest report really say that it could actually have the potential to provide 50% of the recommended nutrient intake for so many women in Africa and in Asia. But coastal fisheries are also, because they're very scattered and spread all over the place, they tend to be underreported. There's not a lot of data and difficult to manage. By their very nature, small-scale fisheries are also conducted by some of the most marginalized people on the planet, and their contributions to food security, to livelihoods, and local economies are not always recognized. They are under a lot of pressure. They compete with industrial fishers. They are under pressure from the impacts of climate change, and this drives further overfishing, illegal and destructive fishing as well. And we have found that really the answer to managing small-scale fisheries and in coastal waters is really community-led management. All over the world, there are many examples of what happens when local fishing communities have both the rights or the priority to use their resources, as well as the authority to co-manage these spaces. Then they can really be the most effective at sustainably conserving their coastal waters. We've worked with fishing councils in Mozambique, for example, or local governments in Honduras and the Philippines, fisher associations in Indonesia. And in each of these places, the communities have really learned how to make science-based decisions about the areas that need to be protected, who should be fishing, where they should be fishing, what kind of gear they should be using. And because they've made these decisions themselves, they're also really much more able to promote compliance and sustain their efforts. And then as they continue these efforts, they also discover what else they need, right? So they are able to identify ways to really improve their enforcement. They are also able to see that they have the ability to increase their savings, maybe even get insurance. Sometimes they will require supplementary livelihoods, and then also really working with their neighbors in concert. But over time, we see that they really are able to start contributing to the local economy, first by building up their own assets, increasing their disposable income, setting up other businesses in the community, and then reducing the burden on local governments, and eventually actually contributing and paying for some of these conservation efforts that they're conducting, and then eventually really contributing taxes. So the monetary contribution of small-scale fisheries to the GDP will never be anything like that of, let's say, tourism, for example. But if we think about the value in terms of food security, livelihoods, biodiversity, and then most importantly, also equity and inclusion, then small-scale fisheries in coastal waters really deserve to be prioritized and resourced and sustained by ensuring that local communities and local governments have both the authority and the capacity to manage and protect their waters. So thank you.
Thank you, Rocky, for that. Our next speaker will be Marianne Teo, Head of Marine Management Organization.
Hi, thank you. Hope I can be heard okay. It's just me, no slides, so thanks everyone. Thank you to the organizers and to the panelists who've spoken before me. Really, really interesting learning that's shared, and it's a privilege to be here. So I'm Marianne, I'm Head of Marine Management in the global team of the Marine Management Organization, and we're a technical arm's length body of the UK government. My personal background is in small-scale fisheries, marine protected areas, and blue carbon and blue economies. And myself and my team, we support UK government ocean programs that provide technical assistance internationally. So I also co-direct the Blue Belt program, which is what I want to dive into today. This is a UK government initiative that works with UK overseas territories to protect and sustainably manage their marine ecosystems. This area of ocean actually represents a vast 4.4 million square kilometers of ocean. So there's a lot for UK overseas territories to manage. And our work on this program supports both people and nature. I think that's really relevant for today. So this is from deep seamounts in the South Atlantic, teeming with life and commercially important fish, to islands supporting vast colonies of penguins, to remote island communities with valuable fishing industries and bustling tourism hotspots in the Caribbean. So the program itself began in 2016, initially focusing on the development of large-scale marine protected areas. And this has supported, through the leadership of the overseas territories, massive marine protected area networks. I think what's important for today's conversation is how we've pivoted. So as the program has evolved, we've expanded our focus beyond biodiversity conservation and towards sustainable fisheries, sustainable growth, and also climate and economic security. So this is really to better reflect each island community's needs. And as the panelists and Rocky just before me emphasized, sustainable fisheries are a lifeline for the islands we support, essential for income and employment, and really, really importantly, and I think Rocky drew this out, so important to communities and culture. And without this management, fish stocks will be damaged beyond recovery, which will jeopardize food and economic security. And I think there is a lot to learn from the UK overseas territories, and I've really enjoyed being able to support them in the ways we can. And I thought I would just share 3 examples of how they're supporting sustainable fisheries. The first I'd like to mention is Tristan da Cunha. So this is Tristan is the world's most remote inhabited island. And their rock lobster fishery, which is central to their economy, has been awarded the Marine Stewardship Council Certificate for Sustainable and Well-Managed Fisheries. And this raises the value of each catch and has opened up new markets. And I think the point here is that the value chain and market system improvements like this, combined with robust fisheries stock assessments and monitoring, and you can at the same time protect key habitats and species. And all of these can work together to help secure fisheries, livelihoods, and economies, like in Tristan, which faces numerous threats and challenges. The second example I'd like to share is in the Caribbean with Anguilla. This overseas territory joined the Blue Belt program just last year. And the first year of work is about evidence gathering, which is our next point, how important evidence gathering is for sustainable fisheries. So our teams are strengthening fisheries data collection to inform fisheries management and also trial vessel monitoring systems. These can both support compliance with fisheries regulations, but also importantly, vessel safety. And then there's also the policy element. So this is all underpinned by the Marine Spatial Plan that Anguilla is developing. And we're assisting them with gathering data, consulting with communities and industries, and reviewing policy and legislation. And this Marine Spatial Plan is such a big part of the sustainable fisheries and sustainable blue economy picture, because it helps plan where ocean activities can take place now and in the future. And I think what we do is not just the technical and evidence, but we work very much on technical support for the policy measures as well that each of the overseas territories may request support for. And we provide evidence and advice to 5 UK overseas territories now on sustainable finance options and how they can look at evidence and opportunity for blue economy investments. My last example, I think we'll zoom out a bit. So there are no physical lines. There are no physical lines, there are no boundaries on the ocean, and fish obviously don't obey exclusive economic zones that we draw on our maps. So that's why regional fisheries organizations, regional fisheries management organizations are so important. And our team supports their needs, UKOT needs and visibility at these regional meetings and regional fora. And we also use remote technology to support and monitor these areas of ocean to deter illegal and unsustainable fishing. I'd love to talk about St. Helena, but I will actually pass on in just a moment to Liz, who we're fortunate to have join here to speak about St. Helena's amazing work for their fisheries. But I do want to just emphasize as a final point that the UK overseas territories, though they make up just 0.0035 of the world's people, they are responsible for sustainably managing more than 1% of the ocean's planet, 1% of the planet's oceans. That's like a small town in the UK managing an area of ocean larger than France, Germany, Spain, Sweden, Finland, Italy, and Poland, and the UK combined. And I think it's just the outsized impacts this represents on the world's fisheries and ocean economy. Small islands like these are pushing well above their weight, and it's critical we do all we can to support them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Our last and final speaker is Elizabeth Clingham, Blue Belt Coordinator, St. Helena Government.
Hello, thank you very much, Branson, for the introduction. So yes, just to follow on from Marianne, I work very closely with the Marine Management Organisation. My role up to fairly recently was funded by the Blue Belt Programme. From an island context, I'm an island gal, born on the island of St. Helena. For people who don't know, St. Helena is a small island, 47 square miles. We're located about 1,200 nautical miles from the coast of Africa and then straight off Brazil, so more or less in the middle of the South Atlantic. We've got the tiniest population of just less than 4,000 people, but surrounded by ocean, it is, of course, a very important resource for us. And fishing and the ecosystem services provided by the ocean is really, really important. You might have to Google us. A lot of people don't know where St. Helena is. So in 2016, St. Helena decided that they wanted to protect our entire exclusive economic zone. And so we were designated as a Category 6 marine protected area. Again, as an island, we want to be able to use our marine environment, but we want to be able to do so sustainably. That's the principles that underpins our marine protected area. But to manage sustainably, we need to understand what sustainability is, what those levels are. And with the support of the Blue Belt Programme and various other funding streams, because we're very heavily dependent on UK government aid for our day-to-day runnings of the island, we have the support to be able to, I suppose, to understand the baselines, I suppose, of the different species diversity that we have, the biomass, how they're distributed around the island, the habitats, and all of that side of things, so that we, obviously through monitoring and understanding the baselines, we can understand if there's any shifts. But more specifically to the Blue Belt Programme, we've tried to design our work around the 5 themes. Themes being understanding biodiversity, second theme being strengthening governance and management frameworks, the third, managing human impacts, fourth, assisting in compliance and enforcement, and capacity building and ocean literacy. all key facets in being able to ensure that our MPA and we do live up to the sustainability slogan that we are trying to be able to achieve. I'm very pleased to say that over the last sort of 6 years, our fisheries science programs have been forefront in making sure that we have that biodiversity understanding and that the decisions that we make going forward have sound and robust evidence base behind it. We've covered a whole swath of different species. Obviously, we start with those that are of commercial importance. So our tuna species, yellowfin tuna, being the predominant catch for most fishes on the island, is also the species that is exported, as well as big eye tuna. Although we're still in a position where we would say we're a bit data deficient, we have some data that helps our management. Down to more neritic species such as grouper, moray eel, glass-eyed snapper, lobster, other redfish, and things like that our fishermen like to be able to catch. And it's important to say as well that as well as commercial, a lot of these species are also caught recreationally. So again, by understanding those baselines, what we have been able to do is be able to determine what are suitable total allowable catches of each species, and then provide the evidence as to why that is the case. What are the minimum size limits that they should be, and what other threats through the way that we use the marine environment need to be managed and mitigated. And in a fisheries context, that would be methods. So just to say that St. Helena is a pole and line fishery only. It's a 1-by-1, 1 line, 1 hook. There is no other forms of fishing for tuna. And lobster and things are done by putts. So the methods that we use, which is also enshrined into our legislation, which gets on to us strengthening governance and having management frameworks in place. So in addition to marine management plans, one that we had in 2016 being reviewed only last year, during the course of that 6 years, we've developed and revised fisheries legislation, which then gives us the power to be able to enforce certain conditions and things like that. And the other most important part, I suppose, about it is that I think it's safe to say that we've taken our fishermen with us. They've supported the science from a tagging perspective. The actual tagging activities are done by the local fishermen, and it's really nice to see how engaged they are with the science. You know, if they catch a fish this week that's got a tag on it, they want to know who tagged it, and then they've become very invested in the results of the science. They're not always excited about what it is. The management, the results and the management that comes out of it, but at least they have the ability to be able to understand it. So yes, that's it pretty much in a nutshell, but more than happy. My email address is available if anybody's interested in learning a bit more about St. Helena. But just to echo just very briefly what Marianne said, we've done a lot in our marine environment. And again, I think we're pushing well above our weight, but we are subject to all of the other effects from the globalization of fishing and other effects and things like that. So please help us on our journey. We're doing the best that we can. We want to be able to benefit economically from our environmental consciousness. And until the rest of the world really starts to embrace environmental consciousness so that we can compete, because, you know, we're little islands in the middle of nowhere. The costs for us to export our product is astronomically higher. So we have to make our product of a higher value because of how it is that we're looking after the little bit of ocean that's entrusted to us. So thank you very much for your time. And I think I might have gone over time.
That's okay. Thank you very much. We have about 5 minutes left for questions. Maybe we can push it to 7 minutes and then wrap up in 3 minutes. So I guess the first question we have here is about regulatory framework to enable mariculture, aquaculture. Is that in place? Julianne, I guess this question is for you.
So no, we have a lot of work that needs to be done in putting regulatory frameworks. And as I said in my presentation, the big thing that is lacking to even jumpstart more aquaculture and mariculture is our lack of trained, skilled, technical scientists, local persons, especially from the Caribbean that are working in Caribbean aquaculture, that can put together some of these frameworks and understand our culture. That's what we really need to have persons that grew up within the Caribbean and can understand more about our culture to start putting some of these frameworks in place. So we do need to have more investments being put into training our local scientists.
Okay, thank you. We have a question for the last speaker, Elizabeth. So the question is about the fishery activity. Is it for local consumption only, or is it for export? And do you have tourism industry on your island?
So yeah, so primarily at this particular point in time, it is for local consumption. However, historically, St. Helena has exported fish to Spain and other countries around the world. At the moment, there are some infrastructure issues with the fish processing facilities and things like that now, which means that exporting hasn't happened, but we're ready for it. For it to continue. St. Helena has exported fresh fish by air, but we're heavily reliant, again, on the ocean, on vessels being able to take our products away. Sorry, there's a tail end of the question and I can't remember what you asked.
It was whether your island had a tourism industry.
So yes, our tourism industry is quite small, again, because we're literally stuck in the middle of nowhere. Getting to the island is quite difficult. So we don't have mass tourism, but tourism is certainly one of those things that we're hoping to be able to develop St. Helena's sustainability, economic sustainability in the future. So in our marine environment in general is one of our biggest draw cards, especially in our summer months for both fishing and other marine water-related activities. So yeah.
Thank you. And we have a question from Marian. Could you just please repeat that statistic about the overseas territories and the amount of ocean that they are responsible for? I think people are quite intrigued by.
Yeah, I was really intrigued. Thank you for that question. I was really intrigued by it myself, and I did some calculations and comparisons to get this together. What I've worked out, and I can, before this is published or anything formally, please come to me and I can share the calculations. But I worked out that the UK overseas territories make up just 0.0035% of the world's people. Yet they're responsible for sustainably managing more than 1% of the planet's oceans. So that's like a population of a small town of UK, 280,000 people, for example, managing an ocean area larger than France, Germany, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Italy, Poland, and the United Kingdom combined. So that is a really significant kind of outsized impact and area of ocean to manage for these small islands.
Great. And then we have a general question about coral reefs. Since coral reefs are really the backbone of fisheries and fishing systems, and coral reefs have been experiencing quite a tough time in the recent years with increasing ocean temperatures and bleaching events. How can we ensure that fishing and fisheries continues into the future with the pressure that coral reefs are facing?
I can take a stab at the first part of the question. In our case, we do kind of help the communities understand the science behind, let's say, bleaching potential and really trying to identify which areas might be more adaptive to to heat and other areas, and then taking steps to either protect those areas or manage the fishing around those areas better. Right now we are not doing work around restoration, or I think what you mentioned was marine cloud brightening. But I think in our case, it's really just helping the communities understand how they can maybe declare new protected areas that are in areas that are less prone to damage and things like that.
Any other comments on?
Yes.
Dr. Pear?
Yeah, just a small comment. When we started about 20 years ago working on the small islands and mainly the French one, people were only focusing on reef. So they were for everything. And with all the work we have done, we have realized that it is not a question of focusing on reef. It is a question of focusing on the whole ecosystem. So reef, seagrasses, and mangrove. You cannot, just work on the reef if you still have some pollution, degraded the mangrove and the seagrasses. So we have to work at a more global scale in order to sort it out the problem. The other thing that we are implementing with the Jeff and a few projects is linking the fisheries and the environment conservation and the restoration. So we have recently set up a Jeff project in the Gulf of Guinea, where we are clearly establishing a payment for ecosystem services between the fisheries industry and the protection, the people who are running the protection. So it's about the question of looking at the system as a whole and establishing a clear link between the two.
Julian, did you want to comment?
Yeah, so marine MPAs are very important aspect of this. Jamaica is doing a good job of creating more fish sanctuaries every day and having strict close seasons, especially with conch and lobster season. It's very, very strict and has to be reinforced. However, I think the aspect of, especially for the Caribbean and worldwide, overfishing is a serious problem. And so although it's a part of our culture, it's something that we do have to take in mind that it's not about doing more fishing. We have to start looking at alternatives. And this is where aquaculture comes in, and restorative aquaculture, that we have to start looking at the science part of it, how to create these closed cycles in which we can create more food, because we do have a growing population. And then with climate change, I mean, we just saw Hurricane Beryl destroyed one of our islands and did significant damage throughout the Caribbean. Entire seaweed farms were destroyed in Canoe and in the Grenadines. And we have flooding and destruction. So fishermen are going to find it harder to find fish every year. It's going to be seasonal. They have to go deeper and further away. So we have to start looking at the solutions, and very quickly. And this is where mariculture comes in. And we really need to start doing more research and quickly into looking at this aspect in this sector.
One final question from me about the aquaculture and mariculture. Do you have a sensitizing campaign to the general public about the benefits of this type of activity? Are you working with schools or government organizations to spread the message to the general public? How supportive?
Yeah, so we just started. We became official this year. And so it is a culture, an entire region. And so we know it's going to take time. But yes, we're using the digital social media to get to the next generation, because that's where we feel that the gap is really missing. Where the university students within the Caribbean have really started to want to learn more. And so within the next year, hopefully next year, we'll be at the summit in May in St. Kitts, and we'll have more information of exactly what we have done in the last year by doing more marketing. But again, it takes investment, and that's really what we need to have more internal investment, but we need outside investment as well to start realizing how important it is. And yes, we will be definitely working with governments to be doing this.
Okay, thank you. We have quite a few more questions, but we are unfortunately out of time. So I would like to thank all the speakers for their interventions, and the audience for the thought-provoking questions. And on that, I think we are ready to close this session. So thank you again, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
So just before we leave, we do have some time to go over. I would like to ask each of the panelists to provide a small remark to close, 30 seconds. Would like to go first? Rocky?
Sure. When we talk about blue economy, let's never forget small scale fishing communities.
Wonderful. Elizabeth?
I think never underestimate the power of the little islands. We are far more invested in our oceans than the rest of the world, because we live, eat, and breathe it every day, and we're heavily dependent on it for so many reasons: access, food, you name it, our livelihoods, our culture, and things like that. We must protect it. We see it more than other people do. So, you know, it's just a reminder to the rest of the world to think about the little guys, you know, surrounded by water all over the world, because we're doing our bit and we need everybody else to do their bit as well.
Thank you so much. Dr. Pierre?
Yeah, just a quick final remark. I think the future of the fisheries and also the aquaculture, you know, not only stand within the sector, but by making connection with the other sectors like the tourism, the restoration, the science. So it has to be much more connected in order to have a real future.
Thank you so much. Marianne?
I think what stood out for me has been what other speakers have mentioned, and I think it's about investment in sustainable blue economies, but really investment in people. So that's paying people to do the good work, that's training people, and that's training and supporting people who are local and able to lead the way on their islands and countries. I think that's what stood out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Julianne? Sorry, you're muted.
Yes, definitely, Marianne, is exactly what we need in the Caribbean. I'm echoing you specifically because we need to invest in our next generation. We have a 30-year gap in trying to catch up with the rest of the world in aquaculture. We really need it for our small islands. And so we are connecting with the global world because we're not reinventing the wheel. It's already, the information is already out there. We just need to get the investment to get it going.
Fantastic. And to our moderator, Dr. Branson?
Yes, I would like to sort of put a bit more emphasis on what Marian mentioned. So we're not small island states, but we're large ocean states, and I think that we should invest more in science and research to help us answer some of these questions. So working with people like Dr. Pear, perhaps we can help to help create a culture of understanding for sustainable fisheries going into the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of your remarks, to all of our panelists and our moderator. This has been a fantastic session. We have a lot of people in the audience exchanging information in the chat and making comments and questions. A lot of participation also from our social media. So thank you so much for participating in this session. So I would like to thank everyone who attended this session. But don't go yet, because if you missed it on the opening session, we are very glad to announce that the second Global Sustainable Islands Summit is going to be held in the Caribbean this time around. It's going to be in the beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis, and it's going to take place from May 27 to May 29, 2025. We will be discussing solutions and advancements in sustainable energy. Please note that all of the attendees of the Virtual Island Summit can get an additional discount, and please check out the chat for the information. I would like to also invite you for our next session that is coming up in just 1 hour, Beyond Seats 4, Implementing the Antigua and Barbuda Accords. It's going to be very interesting. We will have the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the government of Antigua and Barbuda. We will have experts from the United Nations, Indian Ocean Commission, Caribbean activists, and also representatives from the University of Mauritius. So thank you so much, everyone. Let's see each other on the next session. And please don't forget to follow us on Instagram, _Island Innovation, _Island Innovation. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.